we were thinking about transforming smallholder agriculture, we thought it's good to look at the efforts the government has been putting in place to improve productivity. And one of those efforts relates to the fertilizer subsidy. And I think we are all aware that there are two different subsidies that the government has been involved in. One is the general fertilizer subsidy that's distributed through NCPB, and the other one is the NIAP. NIAP in full is the National Accelerated Agricultural Input Access Program. And our focus here will be the NIAP. We did not look at the effects of the general subsidy. So we need to be clear from the beginning that we are talking about the NIAP here. And so the study we carried out was to look at the effects of the NIAP program on smallholder incomes and production. NIAP in brief was introduced in 2007 with the objective of assisting resource-poor farmers to be able to use more inputs in their production system with the hope that their productivity would increase, their incomes would also increase, and so would reduce poverty among that category of farmers. So NIAP is a targeted subsidy program targeting resource-poor farmers. And there was criteria used to decide who would be a recipient of the subsidy. Particularly had to be resource poor, in other words, belonging to the low income group, that would grow maize 1 acre, who had little land, the focus was 1 hectare. And again, also they considered vulnerable populations, in that case considered women-headed households and child-headed households where they were available. So the idea was to boost use of inputs, fertilizer in particular, but the program had also a component of seed in it. So a farmer received 100 kilograms of fertilizer and 10 kilograms of improved maize seed. So we thought it was good to find out whether that program has had an effect in boosting productivity and so reducing poverty among the targeted households. And what we found as we did our study, and we compared this NIAP program with other programs in the region. You know, we have programs in Zambia, Malawi, Nigeria, and other African countries that are also giving subsidies. So we wanted to look at what's the impact of NIAP on the farming community that received the subsidy, and also how does NIAP relate with other input subsidy programs in the region. So one of the things we found is that NIAP as a program can be considered smarter than those other input subsidy programs in the region. One, because in practice NIAP was very well targeted. So the NIAP recipients were actually resource poor, and we found from the data we collected that this recipient had less land, they had lower asset wealth, and were of lower welfare status. When we asked questions like, when did you run out of grain in your household, an indicator for food security, we found that most of the recipients actually ran out of the grains very early, shortly after the harvesting period, in which case then you can classify them as being vulnerable. The second thing that makes us think that NIAP would be considered smarter than the other input subsidy programs is that it was implemented through vouchers that were redeemable at agro-dealer shops. So a farmer would get a voucher and take it to an accredited agro-dealer, and they would get the inputs. And the use of that existing input distribution was helpful because it meant that there wasn't a lot of displacement of the fertilizer that farmers were already buying from the private sector, and that was very crucial for its success. So it didn't undermine the purchases from the private sector. And because then the private sector was working or functioning well, and the farmers that were not targeted were able to access the fertilizer they needed. And for those who are targeted, they received the fertilizer in a timely manner, and so were able to carry out the farming operations in a timely way. That we picked up, especially when comparing NIA with the other programs in the region. So in terms of maize production, we found that the NIA recipients registered an increase in maize production, and this came primarily from an increase in productivity rather than an increase in the area under maize. So there was a small increase in area under maize for the recipients, but the greatest portion of the increase in production came from an increase in maize yields or productivity. However, we found that the program in its among the recipients really did not increase the total acreage under cultivation. So it increased the one under maize by a small proportion, but not total acreage under production, and also not total household incomes. However, we also looked at the impact of NIA on poverty. I said that one of the objectives was to reduce poverty. So when we considered different poverty measures, we found that although the number of households below poverty line did not change, the percentage did not change, among the NAP recipients, the poverty gap and poverty severity reduced, which means that NIAP as a program helped to increase incomes among the poor, but the increase may not have been sufficient to bring them up above the poverty line. And one of the things we may attribute that to is because NIAP, as you see, as a subsidy, the package was small, and also it was a one-time package. So it was not repeated. So what we were capturing was the effect of this program in one season. So we think if it was repeated among these resource poor farmers, it's likely that we would have registered a much bigger impact that would have perhaps helped to reduce the proportion of households that are living in poverty. So we think, as I have said, that better performance of the program compared to the programs in the region was because of the targeting, and we really like to think that going forward, the county governments that are picking up the subsidy programs, as we have seen several of them have what they are calling the farm input support programs, that they would consider the design and implementation of the program as being a very important factor in ensuring that we get the impacts that we are looking for as we invest in these support programs. So the design and implementation of those programs is critical. And also, in terms of recommendation, we think that the use of the existing fertilizer distribution systems, as that is through the private sector, is very helpful because it does not displace the fertilizer that farmers were previously buying from the stockists for the input subsidy. And that is important because it will not only encourage private sector involvement in the fertilizer industry, but it will also be important in ensuring that the farmers that are not receiving that subsidy get the input in a timely manner. But overall, what we would like to propose is that such programs need to be taken up from a holistic point of view, so that we are not just focusing on one small component on fertilizer. We think if there are investments, complementary investment in other areas that would help boost productivity, would have a much higher impact than we are observing just from NIA. And so we suggest that it would be important to increase investments, particularly in improving soil health. We know that our soils are very acidic, so something like liming would be a very good input to focus on, so that now we can boost the productivity. of course, investment in research, in information, and in providing the right and affordable technology and innovations would help boost productivity. Thank you.
Thank you, Lillian.